The year is 2012. I was in technical school studying aerospace maintenance on the C-130 aircraft at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. I was on the mid-shift for these classes, otherwise known as the night shift, for the whole duration of my tech school. These classes, they ran from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. And oftentimes, we would get done with the coursework for that night pretty early on in that shift, normally by like 8 or 9 o'clock. So we would have to fill up our time with something. And we couldn't leave the classroom, so luckily we had a television that was connected to the internet, and we would just watch YouTube videos all night. Now, I remember this one night in particular. My instructor found this video about this group of people that built a virtual reality first-person type combat simulator, kind of similar to the Call of Duty games. And that used, among other things, a 360-degree, I guess, ball-type treadmill, so you could run in any direction, 360 degrees. And they also had this, for lack of a better word, television that completely curved around you. It wasn't multiple televisions that were just placed around you. It was one seamless curved television. Kind of similar to an OmniMax screen, if you've ever seen or have heard of those. Now, up to that point, I'd never seen anything like it. I've never seen a television quite like that. It was incredibly lifelike. It was thin. The picture was super crisp. And like I mentioned, it was curved around the entire room, curved around the user. At first, I thought it was some kind of projection, kind of like the OmniMax I just mentioned. But after some Googling, we figured out that it was actually something called OLED technology. Now, many people see the LED portion of that acronym, which, by the way, stands for Organic Light Emitting Diode. And they assume that those two technologies, LED and OLED, are similar, but in fact, they are very different. So today, I'm going to be talking to you about marketing strategies through product lifecycle and primarily the television application of this OLED technology. The product lifecycle, that's the course that a product sales takes and the profits take over its lifetime. Now, there's 4 stages. In stage 1, which is the introductory stage, this is a good period of, it's the beginning period. It's very slow. Sales are slow. Growth is slow, because the product is just recently introduced. It's just introduced into the market. Nobody really knows about it yet. So, when was the OLED technology introduced? Now, that was first invented back in 1987, primarily by 2 chemists that worked for the Eastman Kodak Company, Stephen Van Slyke and Ching W. Tang. Later, in June of 2001, those 2 guys were awarded an Industrial Innovation Award from the American Chemical Society for their, I think, groundbreaking work in organic light-emitting diodes. They unknowingly changed the future of television. So Kodak, when the technology was still new, they released like the earliest OLED-equipped products. Let's see, the first one, it had like a 2.2-inch OLED display. It was a camera. It had a little 2.2-inch display with 512 by 208 pixel count, which is a traditional 1080p high-def, full HD TV is 1080 by 2160 pixels. So you can see the difference in resolution. But it was a long time ago, so it was pretty good for the time. Now that was on the LS633 Easy Share camera. Since then, Kodak has released. They have licensed a lot lot of their OLED technology to a lot of other companies. Now we're fast forwarding to 2013. Okay, and there's big tech companies like Samsung and LG that begin their attempts at finally manufacturing OLED TVs. And they want to sell them to the everyday consumer like you and I at reasonable prices. But for several reasons, that didn't work out. Both companies had virtually no marketing campaign whatsoever. They did nothing to educate the consumer on what the product was or how it set itself apart from other products as a superior product. Now, this flaw vastly narrowed the market to the select few tech-savvy consumers who were even aware of its existence and could also float the $13,000, yes, $13,000 price tag. This scenario, I think that it had some similarities to like the advent of HD TVs, like way back in the mid-2000s, like when plasma TVs first came out. They were much thinner than the traditional like CRT tube TVs that the market was flooded with at the time, and they had a better picture. It was very clear. They instantly stood out as different. However, the first generation of OLED TVs didn't really look that much different from the TVs that were already on the market. In fact, some of them looked even lousier, for lack of a better word. The companies did nothing to showcase their potential to be the sleek, like paper-thin television of the future, and came across, like I said, as poorly designed and kind of clunky. Now, after this first generation of these clunky OLED TVs flopped, the company LG, they really stepped up their game. They came up with a different pixel variation that made the OLED panels much cheaper to mass produce. Now, this technology was exclusive to them, by the way. That's important later. They released a new line of these OLED TVs at a much cheaper cost than Samsung. And like I just said, since LG owned the technology, Samsung couldn't keep up and started focusing its resources elsewhere, kind of trying to copy them, but they just couldn't do it. Now, this left LG way, way out in front, and with basically a monopoly on the OLED market for televisions. But there was still a big problem of how to get the general population interested in these things. I mean, they were cheaper than before, but they were still really, really expensive. Now, due to these OLED TVs being in the introduction stage, profits were nearly non-existent because of the very heavy expenses of the product introduction and manufacturing, and then they didn't have the sales to bump it to help it grow any further, because they weren't getting the word out there enough, and it just cost too much money. So as time went on, the OLED TV eventually satisfied the market, and it entered stage 2, which is known as the growth stage. Now, in this stage, the sales increased rather quickly. How did this happen? Well, LG pulled out all the stops, and they ran their first ever for the company, Super Bowl commercial during Super Bowl 50. And they even went as far as to cast Liam Neeson to star in it. They dubbed the commercial "The Man from the Future," and I think that it was the perfect way to announce a new product to the general public and still leave them asking questions about it. It was classic Liam Neeson. Now, later that year, they released a new line of their OLED TVs, ranging from $3,000 to $8,000, which was a huge price drop compared to previous years and models. Like I had mentioned before, like the first generation was like $13,000. So compared to that, not as much. Now, LG even went as far as to mount their flagship model television on a glass panel, making it only several millimeters thick, and thus solving their image problem once and for all. All of a sudden there was this huge surge of LG showcases popping up in stores like Best Buy to be seen by everyone. I mean, they were really eye-grabbing, colorful, high-tech looking. They were cool. Now these showcase televisions, they were usually placed side by side to their other competitors' displays, and by a side-by-side comparison, it kind of sold itself. It showed them just how superior the picture was, and like I said, it sold itself. Everywhere I looked, from commercials to billboards, source signage, and internet ads. I just saw it all the time, the corner of Facebook. They were everywhere. LG was getting their message through, and their popularity was really going up. Now, I believe that LG OLED TVs made their way to the beginning of the third stage, the maturity stage. Now, the maturity stage is a period of kind of slowdown in sales growth compared to the growth stage. LG's OLED TV line started to achieve acceptance by most potential buyers due to their heavy commercial exposure. Profits are leveling off due to the increased marketing outlays that defend the product against its competition. Now, at this point, the only well-established competitors that they have are companies that produce a completely different kind of product, such as Samsung or Sony, that decided to invest their time furthering the LED TV market. So, they were completely different things. Now, this past year, LG unveiled a new kind of OLED TV that's capable of being completely mounted on a wall and taken off from its control module and soundbar. The TV that I have, while it's super thin, it can't really be mounted on a wall because of its massive soundbar and control module. Now, they call this technology picture-on-wall technology versus this, which they call picture-on-glass. To me, this shows that LG is listening to the consumers' demands, their complaints and their tips about improving and widening their product lineup. Adding the soundbar to this generation model was one of the ways that they solved the sound not really being good enough on some of their previous models. And in the model after this one, people didn't really like, as I mentioned, that they couldn't wall mount it, so they decided, hey, let's take it off the soundbar and just put it on the wall like a picture. Now, the LG OLED TV market, I don't really think, it's not near the final stage, which is the declining stage. When sales fall off, profits drop, and, technology, it keeps improving and it makes stuff like this obsolete. It's just not there yet. I mean, sooner or later, someone's bound to introduce a product that rivals or maybe even, eventually is better and takes over for the LG OLED TVs. But until then, I mean, they remain the go-to company for this OLED TV technology. So, as I discussed, the LG OLED TVs have gone through 3 of the 4 stages of the product life cycle: introduction, growth, and maturity stage, which they are now in. I'm sure at some point, once a superior technology is introduced, they'll finally go into the decline stage. For now, they're going to stay in maturity. So, in closing, I'd like to thank you for listening to me geek out over a technology that I'm very passionate about, while also teaching you about the marketing strategies through the product lifecycle. Thank you.